The train was delayed by 11 minutes. I remember because I kept checking my phone, standing on the platform at Union Station with my rolling suitcase bumping against my ankle every time someone pushed past me. 11 minutes doesn't sound like much. But when you just spent 4 days in Chicago dealing with your mother's estate, sorting through 40 years of her life stuffed into a 2-bedroom apartment, signing papers you don't fully understand, crying in a storage unit over a bread maker you didn't even know she owned, 11 minutes feels like the universe adding one final insult. I was 38 years old, recently divorced, and I was going home to an empty apartment in Cincinnati that still smelled like someone else's cologne no matter how many times I lit candles. I just wanted to sit down. When the train finally pulled in, I grabbed a window seat in car 7, middle of the train, right side. I always sit on the right side going home. I don't know why. It's just one of those small things I've held on to. My rolling bag went up in the overhead rack, but I kept my purse, my black leather shoulder bag with the broken interior zipper I kept meaning to fix, tucked between my knees. My phone, my wallet, my mom's watch that I'd taken off her wrist at the hospital 6 weeks ago and hadn't been able to put down since. Everything that mattered was in that bag. The car filled up steadily. A couple with a toddler sat 3 rows ahead. 2 college-age guys with AirPods in took the seats across the aisle. An older gentleman in a tan jacket settled in behind me, rustling a newspaper. Normal Tuesday afternoon Amtrak. The kind of ride where you put on a podcast and zone out for 5 hours and 40 minutes and try not to think too hard about anything. I put my headphones on. I did not play anything. I just sat there watching the city slide away through the window. That's when I noticed the conductor. She wasn't doing anything unusual, just walking the aisle, checking tickets, the way they always do. She was maybe 50, black woman with close-cropped silver hair and reading glasses pushed up on her forehead. Her name tag said Renee. She had the kind of face that had seen everything and wasn't impressed by any of it, but not in a mean way, more like a doctor who's completely calm because they've handled worse than whatever's in front of them. She scanned my ticket on her little device, handed it back, and kept moving. I took my headphones off to adjust them, and that's when I heard it. 2 rows back, a man's voice. Low, not whispering exactly, but careful, controlled. The kind of voice that doesn't want to carry. Doesn't matter what she said, we get to Cincinnati what she said. We get to Cincinnati, it's done. I didn't turn around. Something about the way he said it's done made me stay very still. I heard a second voice, younger, also male, also quiet, and the woman, handled. I put my headphones back in. My heart was doing something uncomfortable. I told myself I was being ridiculous. I told myself I'd been through a lot this week, and my nervous system was fried, and I was reading menace into a completely ordinary conversation. People say it's done all the time. People say handled all the time. It's business talk, sports talk. It's nothing. I opened Instagram and stared at it without seeing anything for about 4 minutes. Then Renee came back through. She stopped at my row, leaned slightly, and set a folded napkin on the armrest beside me the way you'd set down a drink without making a fuss about it. She didn't look at me when she did it. She was already half-turned, saying something cheerful to the couple with the toddler ahead. I looked at the napkin, unfolded it. In small, even handwriting, move to car 4, leave your bag, don't look back when you go. I read it 3 times. I looked up. Renee was already moving toward the front of the car, her back to me. My first thought was that this was some kind of mistake, wrong passenger. My second thought was that this was a prank, which made no sense. My third thought was the voice behind me saying, handled, and the way the word had landed in my chest like something heavy dropped on a wood floor. I sat very still and thought about my bag. My mom's watch was in my bag. The watch had a small crack in the crystal from when she fell the first time, 2 years ago. I had been meaning to get it repaired and I never did, and now I carried it everywhere because it felt like the last warm thing she'd left behind. I thought, I am not leaving that bag. And then I thought, don't look back when you go. Renee knew something. She had walked this train for, I didn't know, years probably. She had that kind of settled competence that doesn't come from a training manual. She wasn't panicking. She wasn't pulling an alarm. She was handling it the quiet way, which meant she needed me to move without causing a scene. I unzipped my purse. I took out my phone and my wallet and my mom's watch, and I pushed them into my coat pocket. I left the bag between my knees with nothing in it that mattered. Then I stood up, left the bag on the seat, and walked toward the back of the car. I did not look back. That was the hardest part. Every instinct I have said, turn around, see who it is, understand what you're walking away from. I kept my eyes forward and walked the length of the car and pushed through into the connector between cars. The loud rattling section that always smells like metal and something industrial, and then through into car 6, and then car 5, and then car 4. Car 4 was quieter, less full. I found a seat near the middle by the window, and I sat down and I gripped the edge of the seat cushion with both hands and I breathed. Nothing happened for a long time. The train moved. Fields outside the window. A water tower. The sun getting lower. I texted my sister, "I'm on the train. Everything's fine," which was either true or a lie and I didn't know which yet. About 40 minutes later, Renee appeared in car 4. She walked the aisle like she was just making rounds. When she reached my row, she stopped. "You doing okay?" she asked. Conversational. Like she was asking if I wanted coffee. "I don't know," I said honestly. "What's happening?" She sat down in the empty seat across the aisle, angled toward me, and spoke quietly. "2 men in car 7, she said. "I've been watching them since Chicago. One of them, the one by the window, dark jacket, he was on the platform making a call. I was close enough to hear part of it. He used a name." She paused. "Your name. Said it clear as anything. Said it followed by your seat number." I felt my face go cold. "My name," I said. "First and last." She looked at me steadily. "I checked the manifest. You're the only passenger on this train with that name." I stopped. Started again. "I don't understand why. I don't know anyone who would." But even as I said it, something was shifting in the back of my mind. Something I had been pushing away for 4 days while I dealt with paperwork and storage units and a bread maker. My mother's estate. My mother had died with more than I knew. Not a fortune. Nothing dramatic. But a house in Evanston that had gone up significantly in value, a life insurance policy, and a small investment account that her financial advisor, a man I'd met exactly twice, had apparently been mismanaging for years. My cousin, my mother's sister's son, a man I had not spoken to in 6 years, had contacted my mother's attorney 3 weeks ago claiming he was owed a portion of the estate. The attorney had told me it was baseless, that he had no legal standing. I had not thought much about it after that. I had too many other things to think about. I looked at Renee. "There's a dispute," I said slowly, "over my mother's estate. A family member who thinks he's owed money." "Okay," she said. She didn't react with surprise, just filed it away. "Do you know what they were planning to do?" I asked. She was quiet for a moment. "I don't know specifics. But the man on the phone wasn't checking on your well-being." She said it plainly, without drama. "I notified the transit police at the next stop 20 minutes ago. They'll be waiting when we pull in." "The next stop," I said. "That's 43 minutes out, and until then?" "Until then, you stay here. I stay visible on this car, and they don't know where you went." She stood up. "Your bag's fine, by the way. I moved it to the conductor's compartment. The watch is safe." I hadn't told her about the watch. She must have seen my face because she said simply, "It was sitting on top, silver with a leather strap. I could tell it wasn't something you meant to leave." I pressed my lips together and looked out the window and did not cry, which I considered a personal achievement given the week I'd had. When we pulled into the station, I stayed in my seat until Renee came to get me. She walked me off the train herself, 2 steps behind. On the platform, I could see the transit officers moving toward car 7 from both ends, 4 of them. Efficient, unhurried, the way things go when they've been coordinating for an hour. I stood near the exit door and watched them bring the 2 men off the train. The one in the dark jacket was younger than his voice had sounded. Late 20s, maybe. He had a lean, angular face and the flat eyes of someone who has decided in advance that nothing will go wrong. When he saw me on the platform, something crossed his face, not panic exactly, more like a calculation that had come out wrong. The other one I didn't recognize. The first one I did. He was my cousin's friend. I had met him once at a graduation party years ago. He had seemed unremarkable then. He seemed unremarkable now, except for the handcuffs. A detective approached me, a woman in a gray blazer, and asked if I was willing to give a statement. I said yes. We moved inside to a waiting area with plastic chairs and vending machines, and she sat across from me with a notepad and asked me to walk her through what I'd heard and what I knew. It took about an hour. What came out over the following weeks, pieced together from the detective's calls and my mother's attorney, and eventually a brief, terrible conversation with my actual cousin, who claimed he knew nothing about it, was this: the two men had been hired to intercept me before I could finalize the estate transfer, which was scheduled for that Friday. The plan, as best anyone could reconstruct it, was to take my phone and wallet and create enough disruption that the Friday appointment would be missed and a delay could be manufactured. Whether they intended anything beyond that, I still don't fully know. The detective told me once, carefully, that the timeline they'd found on the younger man's phone was more detailed than you'd expect for a simple robbery. I have thought about that sentence a lot. My cousin denied involvement. His attorney sent a letter. The estate transfer went through the following Tuesday instead of Friday. The house in Evanston sold 4 months later. I went back to that train station once, about 6 weeks after everything happened, to pick up a friend arriving from Pittsburgh. I wasn't looking for anyone, but I saw Renee on the platform, walking the length of a train car, doing exactly what she always does. I went over and I said her name, and she looked at me, and after a second, she smiled. A small, knowing smile. The kind that doesn't need explanation. "You doing okay now?" she asked. "Better," I said. She nodded like that was the answer she expected, and then she went back to work. I've thought about that napkin a lot, about what it took for her to write it. The judgment, the speed, the decision to act on something she couldn't prove yet. A lot of people in her position would have second-guessed themselves, would have decided they'd misheard, would have rationalized it away. Because starting something is harder than staying quiet. She didn't do any of that. She just picked up a pen. There's something I come back to when things feel uncertain, when I'm standing somewhere unfamiliar and I can't quite tell if what I'm sensing is real or just the residue of a hard year. I come back to the feeling of that napkin in my hand, the smallness of it, the complete calm with which it changed everything. Someone saw something. Someone said something. Someone decided that a stranger's safety was worth the trouble of getting involved. I keep my mom's watch on my wrist now. The crystal is still cracked. I've decided I'm not getting it fixed. Some things you leave exactly as they are. I've been asked a few times since then what I would have done differently. It's a reasonable question, and the honest answer is, I almost didn't move. That's the part that stays with me. Not the men in car 7. Not the handcuffs on the platform. Not even the detective's careful phrasing. More detail than you'd expect for a simple robbery, though that sentence has woken me up at 2 in the morning more than once. What stays with me is that moment of sitting in my seat, holding that napkin and thinking, I am not leaving this bag. I was 38 years old. I had been through a divorce. I had just buried my mother. I thought I knew what it felt like to be alone in a situation where no one was coming to help. I thought I had gotten pretty good at handling things myself, and I almost let that pride cost me everything. There's something nobody tells you about self-reliance, about that particular brand of stubbornness that women like me wear like armor, which is that it can stop you from recognizing when someone is genuinely trying to help. I had spent so many years being careful about who I trusted that I had started confusing caution with wisdom. They're not the same thing. Caution is a wall. Wisdom knows when to open the gate. Renee knew something was wrong before I did. She had the experience to read a situation I couldn't see, and she had the courage to act on it without any guarantee that I would listen. She didn't know me. She owed me nothing. She wrote that note anyway, set it down without making a scene, and walked away, because she understood something I was still learning, which is that doing the right thing doesn't require an audience. It doesn't require credit. It just requires the decision. I think about what would have happened if she had second-guessed herself, If she had decided, she'd probably misheard. If she had rationalized that it wasn't her place, that she didn't have enough proof that someone else would notice. That kind of silence has a cost that never shows up on anyone's ledger, but it's real. The men in car 7 were counting on exactly that silence. They were counting on everyone minding their own business, moving through their own lives, not getting involved. What I've come to believe, and I say this not as some lesson I read somewhere, but as something I know in my body the way you know cold, is that the quality of your life is largely determined by the quality of your attention. Not your luck, not your connections, your attention. Renee was paying attention. She noticed something specific, and she trusted what she noticed instead of talking herself out of it. That's not a gift, that's a discipline. That's something she built over years of showing up and taking her work seriously and deciding that the people in her care were worth the trouble of full presence. And on my end, once I finally moved, what I discovered was that courage is not the absence of fear. I was afraid walking down that aisle. I was afraid the whole 43 minutes sitting in car 4 staring at my reflection in the dark window. But I moved anyway because someone I had no reason to trust had given me a very good reason to listen, and I decided that being smart mattered more than being proud. My mom's watch is on my wrist right now. Cracked crystal and all. I keep it that way because I think there's something true in not erasing the evidence of what things have been through. You can be careful and still be open. You can protect yourself and still let someone reach you. Those things are not opposites. That's the part I'm still practicing, and I think I will be for a long time.